All right, have fun.
All right. Bye, Ann.
Bye.
Hello, everybody. Welcome, welcome. We are live, and I'm just so blessed to see what God's going to be doing in this call with an incredible leader. I had the privilege of getting to know you in such a great way, Chris, a while back in 2016 and 17, and helped you a little bit on your creative journey. And now you're just flourishing in so many different ways. And Chris, welcome. This is Create Talks. We'd love to really dive into a person's story and hear about what has happened in your life to cause you to grow creatively, to transform culture. And Chris, welcome. How are you doing?
Theresa, thank you so much for having me. Great to be here. Excited to talk about all things creativity.
Oh my gosh, me too. The power of creativity to transform. Chris, tell us a little bit about your journey and what launched you into writing your book, Creativity Unlocked. People can get that on Amazon, right?
Yep. Amazon, Barnes & Noble online, all sorts of places, or just message us on social media. We also have some discounts as well for people, especially like e-versions. So Theresa, for so long, I didn't think I was a creative person. And I was one of many people out there who might not recognize that creativity can take many forms. And so much of the creative process is a reflection of what's happening inside of us. And so I was someone that had lived most of my life finding value and identity in what I could achieve and do and perform, whether that was professionally, educationally, even from like a faith perspective. And what transformed my life was this internal transformation that actually came in one of the darkest seasons of my life. And it was getting help for challenges with addiction, was just in a place that felt pretty hopeless, honestly, while I was working in Silicon Valley. That, like, the internal shifts actually started unlocking all this creativity inside, and eventually led to seeing that it's not just in the arts, although that was something that helped unlock it. We can create through spreadsheets, entrepreneurship. Even this moment that we're having right now is a creative moment. This conversation had never happened before. We're creating an experience for ourselves and also for people watching. And seeing things through that creative lens can unpack so much joy, meaning, and connection in life beyond what we've experienced thus far.
It's so crazy. I mean, I know, like, Brene Brown and all of her research on shame, which is a big part of your story. But it's like you look at this and you go, creativity is meant to not only unlock us, but it's meant to bring us joy, which is part of your story that we'll get into. But I'd love to unpackage this thing of when you're in a dark hole, guys. And again, shout out, if you are wherever you're from, post and your name, and we want to do shout outs to you guys. Thanks for joining. And Chris is open to questions as well. But in this process of pain, like I just want to camp in this, that, we're in places where there's pain, where there's things that happen to us that we're not quite aware of. And in that process, as we move out, we start to see things that shift and change culture. And the pain brings us to a point of we need help. That's not working. Like, that addiction is not helping. How does creativity, how did that unlock you or help you in your journey? Because everybody is in a place of pain in some way in their life. How did that happen?
Yeah, so you said actually very well. Pain is such a good forcing function for change. And, think about the natural human body. Pain is not a bad thing. It can represent that something is off or broken, or that it needs an upgrade in some place. But pain's actually something that's this really helpful tool to give us information that something could be different. And so that might be, if you're listening to this call, it might be something that you're experiencing. Pain can take so many different forms. It can be emotional pain. It can be relational pain. It can be pain. Maybe you're feeling discouraged about your own creative process. Been there in many different ways. And what pain can lead us into is an experience of what actually, from my perspective and borrowing from many other great thinkers out there, what we need that's actually the life fuel for creativity and for life, and it's connection. And Brene Brown does a great job of talking about how connection is a sense of, she uses the word energy, but it's a sense of relationship in a sense. And that can be with other people. in our Creativity Unlocked work, we love helping people think about connection with ourselves, and being honest and authentic about what really brings us joy and what we're creating at work, at home, in our hobbies, and then connection with something greater as well. And those are vehicles, depending on what your background is. If you're watching this, there's also aspects of that where it really maps onto, for me, like where faith and spirituality have played a big role in my journey. And it was this outside the box spiritual experience that actually, this experience of unconditional love, this experience of euphoric hope and joy and peace in the midst of a season where I didn't feel like I didn't think that was possible. I didn't think I deserved it. I'd, in a sense, been trying to manage everything in my own, even though I was someone who was a person of faith most of my life. But it was in the season of letting go, these experiences of letting go, that I got to experience connection that was unconditional. And another word for that, I believe, is grace. That people find, obviously there's a spiritual component for me. I love how people are experiencing that in their journeys. And we need that in creativity. We actually need, grace is what enables us to be authentic and real about where we're at, to be loved, and to experience knowing that we're not alone in that process. And that is the antidote to shame that can, like, brings freedom, but also set us up for our next creative journey that's beyond what we've experienced thus far.
And, and I think the creativity, actually, what you're talking about, it displays what's inside. It's like this mirror of, okay, I'm creating this in my business. I'm creating this for my home or for my family, or art for my wall, or because I started a business here. But it's that inward journey of taking all the stuff. That's what grace does. It takes all the stuff and it repackages and repurposes it to be beautiful. And
yes,
I think that's the beauty of our stories. Our story was not meant to be hidden. And I think so many people live as imposters because they're living from a place where they're so afraid of taking off the mask and saying, you know what, I'm not doing very well over here. And but creativity is that's a place to explore the journey of what it means to create. And I love that, because it seems like when you study the great minds, the people that have changed history that you and I know, it was that inner cathartic journey of what they did in turning around something that had come against them, and then turning it around for good, for a future benefit, for culture, for society, for every other walk of life. It's just such a crazy journey, isn't it?
Yes,
it's so crazy. Go ahead.
And it's wild too how creativity, scientists have developed tests that measure creativity, and NASA actually used it for their astronauts. Some of the researchers decided to study this across different population groups, and they found that kids are naturally score very highly. And so a lot of our creativity journeys aren't necessarily discovering a new aspect of ourselves. They're remembering something that's already there. And it's this aspect of seeing things through a lens where we define creativity as just to bring something new into existence. Thus, it can be in many different forms. And the neuroscience side of it, which I love, how it's helping amplify truth that is changing lives. In our brains, the experience of creative cognition, so just this, like the internal side of creating something, whether it's a day planner, whether it's a schedule, whether it's a thought, it releases joy-causing chemicals in our brains. And I just have a sense, like, have a feeling, if you're watching this out there and you've been discouraged about your creative journey, oftentimes we find where there's a mismatch between our expectations, whether the things that people place on us or things that we've kind of placed on ourselves or agreed with, the mismatch between our expectations and our current state can be a cause of great disappointment, pain. It can even lead into places where people can feel depressed, all these sorts of things.
Yeah.
But if you're watching this, just know that you have permission to be exactly where you are right now. And I hope that my story of having, both in those initial instances of seeing this experience with addiction, hopelessness, turn into this internal transformation that started unlocking creativity, and the 6.5 years since, there's story after story of how challenge, of how difficulty, even places where on the journey of unlocking things internally, it led into new forms of creative outflow. And the number one thing I love sharing with people is that you're not alone in the process. And just as you're sharing, Theresa, there's no shame in recognizing that there's something that's painful or difficult. And it's actually being authentic and honest about that can help us find the connection, find the tools that help us not just move forward for the sake of creative advancement, but actually move forward where our hearts can be more fully alive because then creativity just naturally happens.
It does. I love the movie Peter Pan, and the rendition that we saw with just the with Robin Williams, and how he's looking, this little orphan is looking, goes, well, there you are, Peter. It's like he had grown up with all these masks on, trying to be the hard businessman, and he had forgotten the playful side of who he truly was, and where his imagination was able to create and have life. And that's what his wife wanted him to find, and he found it. But it's like that thing that we all have. It's the way that we're wired. You know, the Creator made us to create, and he made us in a place where we need to find that place where we are authentically ourselves. And that's what you're talking about. And it's a great discovery. I have some shout outs here. Hey guys, thanks for joining. I'm with CHRIS LUMRY. If you have any questions, please, 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 or if you're enjoying this, let us know. Again, we have, oh gosh, Shalom Aron from Cape Town. So glad you're with me. Give my love to that place. Paige Cranny from Denver, Judy from upstate New York. So glad you're with us there. Lorraine from UK. Yay, Lorraine. Love having you on. I have, this is Lorraine. So she goes, I have bought Theresa's book, Born to Create, really looking forward to reading and co-creating. Yes, I mean, Chris's book, Creativity Unlocked, mine, Born to Create, like these are books that we want to get out into the places, because it's like creativity is where we find who we truly are, and it's where we find the place where it continually bears fruit. That's what I love about creativity, is like it's not just meant to be a one-time show, but like you look at like the Mona Lisa, you look at the Eiffel Tower, you look at business ideas like Steve Jobs, other people that have created life transforming things, electricity, which we have right now. All that stuff was born out of this thing as, oh, I have an idea. What if I do this? Yeah. And then it happened, and now it's transforming people's lives. It's just crazy, isn't it? I want people to hear your story though, because like share about what happened to you when you began to work in the Silicon Valley and you began to work on these projects for social impact, because you have a wide variety of things that you've been placed in the last 6 months that have just it's like you're swimming in this creative swirl, and I want people to hear your story.
Yeah, thank you, Theresa. Well, so picking up, this was early 2016 that I had this kind of transformational inward experience. And there was a gift in that too, where I kind of got to take a look and kind of had to take a look at how I was engaging with life in pretty much every area. So how am I processing thoughts and emotions? What am I thinking about career? How am I experiencing the workplace? And it was that lens of seeing actually what my heart, what makes my heart alive, what brings a sense of satisfaction, joy, is this experience of meaningful connection with other people, with a sense of something greater than me. For me, very much like that was very much a faith in God journey that unlocked all of that. And for people who aren't necessarily, that's not their perspective or their kind of worldview in this current season, I always encourage people to start looking for something on that, like, look at like a cause, look at something you can attach yourself to. It's a journey for all of us of deepening connections with different places. And so one of the gifts I've been given was I got to experience a lot of things that the world celebrates. I did my MBA at Harvard. I went to Princeton undergrad. I've been to 70 countries. I had a lot of financial stability throughout my life and had the job in Silicon Valley. I even done a lot of stuff that was like very impact focused. And yet the happiest I'd ever been up until that point was hanging out with people, sitting around a plastic table in Redding, California, talking about our lives and our feelings in this kind of recovery setting. And it was that, and also the spiritual connection. So when I went back to the tech world, I was at the corporate side of Uber at the time. I went back with what I want to like try to find here is a sense of connection. And I didn't have the creativity language then, because I'd started to like express myself in writing in some different spaces, but it was really about connection. And that journey led into the sense of actually, with this new internal operating system, I began to actually love my job in a way that I hadn't before. And I found ways to actually create experiences. And I began to find what we talked about with Creativity Unlocked. We talk about these creative themes. So there are different aspects, there are topics, there's skill sets, there's experiences, activities that bring us joy, whether or not anyone rewards us or sees them. And I realized because of my experience, one of my themes was wellness, mental health. Another, as you can tell, I like words. Another is I love conversations with people. And so I began to see, oh, I can create moments to involve that. It's not my day job, but I can find ways that bring a sense of meaning and purpose. And that actually helped fuel what I was doing on the business side. And there reached a point for me where everyone's story with how they can loop in and pursue their creative passions is different. I'm very much someone, like you said earlier, one step at a time is the key for creative journeys. It's the key for behavioral change. It's the key for everything. I think we're meant to live in that way. But I reached a moment where I was like, wait a second, 85% of Americans dealing with addiction issues aren't getting help. There's got to be something we can do to change this. And so I started a nonprofit that uses storytelling to increase hope. And our stories are focused on what people find on the other side of the journey. Like when I was in addiction, when other people were in addiction, the idea of getting sober, not only is it not appealing, it seems crazy and impossible. So we focus our stories, we celebrate that journey and that pathway, whatever that wellness journey looks like for people. But we focus in on the purpose, the connection, the family, the career that people build in the process. And there are 18 million Americans or so out there with substance use disorders not getting help, but there are actually more that are in recovery. And we hear it's the power of story. It's the power of honoring the different aspects of people's journeys. There's been so much shame around addiction, which it's understandable. And I'm a big fan of, like, for some people, anonymity is so important. And I kind of I guide people into that place because shame can be a real thing that inhibits our growth journey. But as people step in that process, we need to hear more from people who are in a stage where they can actually share their story and are not having repercussions in their life. Because there's more Americans out there who are in recovery. So I started this nonprofit. We do storytelling. We actually filmed our first feature documentary last summer. We've been around for about 5 years. And in the journey, I started making electronic music. I started pursuing these personal passions as I was kind of stepping into this adventure. And it led into, I did not plan to write a book about creativity. I never thought I'd be someone who's helping people explore it. But I began to find these expressions rooted in personal or intrinsic joy. And then discovered there's a lot of neuroscience and psychology that kind of supported this. And it led into a book that really, I was just journaling. And then there's this key moment where I had this kind of aha light bulb moment of thinking, oh, wait, there's a book here. And that led into the platform and all the things that we do. So that was a somewhat short, but not too short version of the story. I'm happy to share more about the process too.
Well, I love it. First of all, like, what an incredible legacy of self-discovery, of what happens when I was in this addicted place. What did I need? I mean, I've studied addiction as well. And it really does come from a place of not feeling wanted or loving yourself, or a place of in pain and from your past of not getting what you needed, and then going into a substance to fulfill an intimacy. Yep. It's like an intimacy disorder, to tell you the truth. Yeah, and so what you're talking about, then you move into this place of connecting to a person's story, which means they have to connect to the root system of what's really going on. And then what happens when you find joy, because somebody knows you, and that's the power of belonging and the power of what can happen in that process. And creativity then flows from it, because there has to be a way of then getting that story out, whether it's through photography, whether it's through writing, whether it's whatever it is. I'm thinking of Freedom Writers and that amazing movie, but it was a true story about a whole student body in LA that was having a hard issue because it was drug infested, and it was right in the middle of just gang infested stuff. But one teacher said, let's hear your story, and began that journey. And that's the power of, guys, if you want to set people free, it's them becoming known, and the joy of their story, and the joy of what they learn in the midst of pain, that they can connect. I love this. This is so powerful, guys. I think what's happening right now is a lot of you out there, I could feel it. I don't know what you're feeling, Chris, but like, if you are listening to this now, or you will be listening to this in the future, I just want to say that your journey matters, that there is something inside of you that has felt well, if anybody ever knew this about me, if
Mm-hmm.
if anybody ever knew what happened over here. And there's this thing where you bury, and then it's like you're sitting on this time bomb, and all of a sudden, by you sharing, by you create, I mean, that's why I started Create
Mm-hmm.
Academy. By you sharing your story, by
Yeah.
you beginning to fuel that with peace, with grace, with joy, you start to realize like you can impact so many other people with your story.
Yeah.
And that's the beauty of what you're doing. I love it.
Yeah.
And you got involved in music. Share a little bit
Yeah.
about that story. I mean, I really am
I will.
intrigued. It's so
Yeah.
fun.
We'll come back to the music thing in one second. I just want to touch on what you're saying about story, and just want to like rip on that because so often we can hear a phrase, we can even think about like the process of getting help or reaching out, and we have a preconception of what's going to be like. People have a
Mm.
preconception of what like therapy or counseling is going to be like. I am a huge fan, and I think about like we think about ourselves and like we care about our physical health, but we and our external kind of health, but do we care about what's happening internally? And there's all these different like resources. So if you're watching this and you've had like a negative experience with one aspect of maybe try to get help, maybe try to reach out and it just wasn't a productive experience. Sometimes it can actually be quite painful. There are other options out there, and support groups are some of the most incredible places because it's people with fellow stories and lived experiences. I didn't realize that some of the most powerful transformational spaces in the world, and there are support groups of all kinds. It can be around addiction, it can be around people, that can be substances, that can be there's like sexual addiction groups, there's behavioral change groups, there's support groups for people who have had different types of illnesses, cancer survivors, veterans. But there's something significant about being with people who understand. And there's
Yeah.
someone out there, no matter what your experience is out there, no matter what maybe your lowest moment is, there's someone out there who hasn't lived the same thing you have, but they probably have more in common than you think. And
Yeah.
yes, there's someone who's willing to listen and be with you. And it's exactly sometimes even the idea of sharing your story, that can feel like a bridge way too far. And that might be years down the road. That the best stories that we share are the ones that are shared in freedom and
Yeah.
not from a place of feeling like, oh, I've got to do this. Because if you're watching this, and this is why I walk our storytellers through around the addiction stuff that we do, is that I'm passionate, people need to know that you're more than your story. That before you're a storyteller, before you're even a powerful testimony of hope, you're a human being and you're loved. And that's actually, this is going to be a fun segue to reset into the music. That's actually what are the themes that we get to make. I work with some really amazing friends. I stumbled into meeting, and we make electronic dance music. And I also have a bunch of friends who are in the electronic dance music industry, who they've been pioneering this full time for decades. I do it as a passion project. It's actually how I discovered creativity, was actually creating something that was like, wait, if I'm just making this and I come alive in this, and it's just for that, that's enough. But it's fun now to get to like translate that and actually to be a part of um, uh, getting to go on this journey with friends who are like, it's their full-time gig. They've been dedicated to this. Their craft is so excellent. And what's fun is that in these environments, people are open. There's a lot of mental health issues. There's a lot of addiction issues, a lot of chemical substance related challenges, but people are looking for hope and they're looking for joy, and it creates space for connection. And we get to go and we go into different events and venues. And some of our are those that our friends are playing, they're putting on these events. People from all different backgrounds, walks of life coming together. And we get to see this release of hope and joy happen. And it can lead into deeper conversations. It can lead into all sorts of things, but we're just there to love people. And so it's been wild because I don't know if I would have written this book. I don't know if I ever would have um, gotten to be part of kind of what's happening in this industry with these new kind of wellness focuses and different things, unless I'd actually taken the step to start personally exploring songwriting in a way that like I literally hadn't done anything with music in 10 years. I thought the book was closed. I thought that was done and gone. And then it was wild to see, and it was for me this very much divine gift of it waking up again. And you just never know where the journey is going to lead you, especially as you find what brings life to your heart.
I love it. I love what you're saying. It's part of the story of everyone has something inside that they're supposed to be creating, and it's something that only their heart knows. And Lorraine, I love your question. Part of the journey for me is like, I knew that whatever I did with my art and my poetry and the things that I had been given in raising up other creatives like I do, it's meant to transform culture. And so going to festivals, so we talked about this earlier, and doing poetry for people that are just attending, having people do like live art and having them, well, what is your process? What is your story and what you created? It's like, it's having that conversational piece. So let's talk about that there's a conversational piece that happens when you create, whether it's music, whether it's art, whether it's conversations that you have, whether it's writing, or in any food, etc., in any kind of form that you create. There's this conversation of, wow, what did that mean to you as you created it? But then how does it benefit and transform others when they partake of that in some way? And I've been intrigued because as I've done this, I feel like I just take this little part of what I sense inside that I need to do, and then it's just been magnified because of grace into touching so many people's lives. And I just get kind of like shocked because it wasn't a big ask. It wasn't like for me, it wasn't like, oh, it was like, no, I was doing it because I knew that there could be a benefit. And I think that's the great thing that we need to understand about creativity is it's like that inner itch, that curiosity moment. Thomas Edison, after how many tries, finally perfected the light bulb. It's like, it's that inner yearning of, but what if I do? What if this electronic music really impacts people to enjoy their lives, to find out meaning? It's like, it's that inner itch that causes us to know, like, we're not alone. Our creativity is never meant for us alone. That causes us to go, okay, I'm gonna follow this. I'm gonna go after this. But I really wanted to say too, Chris, I feel like this is such a part of your heart and mine as well, that thing about community is so important. I find that so many people that are going through difficult times or have been stuck in their creative process in some way, they have a tendency to retreat and not to reach out. And I just could feel like people going, yay, that's me, that's me. What would you say to people like that? How would you help them to take that leap of faith and to do it?
So baby steps. And the way, again, it's something that I find in faith and kind of that guidance, but also in behavioral psychology, that researchers have found the way that we actually grow and change is by taking small steps and celebrating the heck out of those small wins. And so whether it's in a creative process, whether it's maybe like in sharing something you're creating with other people, we often get creatively stuck where we take a risk that we don't have capacity to handle the downside. So if it goes like worst case scenario, something painful happens, we don't know how to process that. So we kind of like pull out of that. And so one of the ways to navigate that is to have community that helps us process through those things, as well as just thinking about kind of that next step. And it's wild how much our brains are wired for story. And there's a narrative that's shaping each of our perspectives of ourselves, of our creativity, of our goals, of our dreams. It is what it is. And there's incredible parts of that. There's probably places that could be upgraded. And I actually, the picture behind you is incredible. This is a really kind of cheesy way of thinking about it, but it's this picture of creativity where you can there's something and you can see it in different ways. So when I first saw that picture in our call earlier, I mean, clearly it's these incredible flowers, but I for whatever reason, I keep almost seeing these, like, it looks like a rooster to me. And roosters have a significant, for me, of this idea of like calling people up, of like this awakening kind of thing. And there's a whole nother long story about it, but it's a cheesy example of how similar when we express ourselves creatively, people get to see it through their own lens. And we give the gift of our expression And it creates a space for conversation. Really what's happening is connection that we can't control, but it's a gift that we get to give. And the same thing in our internal narratives. Like there's places that how we've seen it in the past, it doesn't have to always look to us the same way. And that's a journey that takes sometimes time, and it takes community, it takes help to actually unpack that. But it's possible.
Yeah, I was talking, gosh, a while back about the power of just the connection, like between J.R. Tolkien, who we love, Lord of the Rings, and that whole journey. And he said that he would have never have written it unless C.S. Lewis was encouraging him. And so there was such a,
Yes.
there's something that happens when we reveal the creativity to others and they go, ooh, that's awesome. You should finish this book, Chris. You should do this,
Yep.
whatever. It's like that thing, that painting. It's like it's meant to awaken something that you can't get on your own. So I feel like that's important, that creativity in what we do, what you all of you that are watching now, there's something inside of you that Chris can't do, I can't do, that only God has called you to do, that unless you have the courage to look at that and see that and do that, there's a part that we will miss.
Yes.
And it's just like so important. It's so vital.
It is.
Yeah.
We're wired to run on joy. And so that's where it's both from like the science side of it and how creativity sparks joy, but we're naturally going to have more resilience, more hope, more stick-to-itness when we're going after things that we actually enjoy. So there's a benefit. Sometimes, at least for me, growing up in different contexts, there were certain roles or industries or even activities that would feel most impactful, or feel like, oh, to be enough, to be validated, to be a success, I had to do these things. And actually the things I'm doing now, even with music, Theresa, I wouldn't have told people that I had a passion for dance music publicly until I was like 30. Like it's been like this rediscovery. And it's that permission. That's where community helps us as well. It creates a space to share things, often that which is most precious for us, which means that often is going to bring some most satisfaction and joy. Those are the things most vulnerable. And so they're also the things that pain can get attached to. And we actually need, we need people that we can actually open up with and that unlock the joy of creativity that can sustain the journey. Because there'll be times where people won't respond to our creativity in the ways that we want to. There'll be times where we go for it, we take a risk, and it doesn't have the outcome yet. And those things, that's not failure. It's actually just another layer, another step of the journey, because we can experience connection and joy all the way throughout.
We can. I love it. I think that that's part of the wonderful thing that happens when we do it for the right reason. I mean, creativity, when you do it because you love it and you do it because it's something that's inside of you, the joy of creating that process, the grace of creating, but also the benefit of how that unpackages other people to experience what you are experiencing is so there's nothing like it. Like it doesn't like, and that's the thing that the addiction will never satisfy. The addiction is always based upon feeding something that will never ever satisfy, because then you have to have more. But when you create in the process of joy and in peace and in grace, it's like it's so fulfilling, and it's not something that actually imprisons you. It actually sets you free.
It does.
It's crazy. Yeah.
One thought on that, Theresa, that I love, because there's something really powerful about like this aspect of creativity that we all carry, is that we can bring something new into existence. And a phrase that we use that might surprise some people is that creativity is actually terrible at adding to your significance or your value or your worth. It simply reveals it's already there. A lot of people are looking for their identity in what they create. And there's understandably so, because there's like amazing things we can do. But the double-edged sword of creativity is that we can always do more. We have this ability to continue to refine, to build, to earn more, to do more, to perform more, to make more. And so it's powerful, but it can lead people into this never-ending hamster wheel versus a perspective that says, actually, the fact that I'm creative reveals that I'm inherently valuable. That as a human being, I have this unique gift of this experience in life, whatever it looks like, whatever challenges whatever I started with in my unique gift set and experience and all those things, there's still a creativity in me that reveals this inherent value, and I can create from that instead of for it. And I know that you're someone who very much espouses this connection between creativity and identity. But it's so it doesn't feel, it's not rocket science, but it can be transformational for the creative process.
It is. It's like learning to create because you're loved, rather than trying to gain approval by what you create. There's a totally different mindset because then it's always on what do people think versus, no, I did this and I feel like so like at peace and pleased with what I've created, and it stands by itself. That's a different mindset. Not that you can't grow, obviously, but we're talking about when your actual self-worth is banked upon what you create. I think that that's the part that's so amazing, is that people are finding that out, and they're starting to understand that creativity is meant to release you and not to imprison you. And
so good.
So powerful. Hey, any last tips, because we're running out of time. Any last tips for people that want to start on this journey?
Yeah, so some of them I'll just recap. Focus and find avenues. Take note of things that bring you joy in your daily life. There's often themes underneath that. Small steps. And then on what you were just sharing, oh my goodness, I had a thought for everyone on it. Oh, very practically, when you take a step of creative risk, and it might be sitting down and just drawing something. It might be like putting together a business plan. It might be speaking somewhere or sharing your story in a new way. Give yourself a 12 to 24 hour no introspection rule. Feedback is a gift. It's important for the creative process. But if we go into that kind of critical, like constructive perspective right away, it actually robs us of the joy of the experience. So it's one of my favorite like tips to leave people with. I was facilitating something last night, and I'm thinking about it like there's probably places I could grow or learn. Those are important places, but I don't start looking at that until I've had a full like 24 hours where I can just enjoy it, so I can actually benefit. And it then makes me want to keep creating versus getting stuck in the critical shame cycle that like wants to defeat the creative process. So
those are so good. Practice, you guys, those tips and continue to grow. And guys, if you want to join a creative community, check out Create Academy, theresadedmon.com. We have our identity track that's starting tomorrow at 9 a.m. or 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. And you're going to learn, Chris has been involved in some of my stuff, so you'll learn about your identity. You'll learn in community. Everybody is in a group for 9 months, and we would love to see you grow and thrive and have joy. Get Chris's book, Creativity Unlocked. I've gotten it. I'm so excited to read that. And just follow him. See what he's doing on Instagram. See the things that are happening in his life to see yourself grow too. Chris, I would love for you to pray. If you have any prophetic or anything that you sense about what people need to hear, go for it.
Yeah, I'll just add one more quick plug. We're actually doing a live event in LA tomorrow night, Creativity Unlocked, and like a workshop activation. And we do them all over the country this fall. I think it'll be our 7th or 8th. And so Instagram is a great way to follow us. At One Step Guides is our platform, and at CHRIS LUMRY is myself. But I'm just gonna say a blessing to close us. And for those who are listening, I just bless that there's going to be an increase of peace and joy around your creative process. And actually that you're going to see the very things that have felt like low points and barriers actually become ingredients into things, and not so all the pieces of it, but you're going to see what you discover, what you find, what you learn about yourself as a pathway towards creativity. And I love the phrase that craft can make fertilizer for powerful creativity, but we need the systems there. So if you're out there, I just bless grace over you to create today, to know that you're loved, to know that you're worthy, not just of creativity, but creative joy. And that what you've experienced thus far is not the fullness yet of what's possible. And all of us are on that journey. I love where I'm at. I love what I create today. I love being able to create, but I know that there's more, and that's okay. And we get to live in the tension of those things. And whatever your walk of life is right now, my goal, my hope as you hear this is that you would know that you're loved and that you're not alone. And if you need support around any of the things we've talked about, There are amazing hotlines out there. Feel free to reach out to us on Instagram around mental health, addiction stuff, creativity stuff. And there's a life that is worth living for you.
Woo! Well said. Wow, guys, this has been so good. I just want to thank you, Chris, for your journey of honesty, your journey of looking at what really helps a person thrive and grow, and knowing that if we don't ask these questions, if we don't have these conversations about what it means to truly be alive, to truly have joy, to truly learn about how we've been creatively wired, we'll never ever find that wonderful light of who we really have been meant to be. And that's what we want. That's what Chris wants for you. And so really go after that. Don't let anything stop you, but keep going until you find your tribe, until you find that. Join Creative Academy, join what Chris is doing. Let's work on this together. Let's create a movement that is not bound by systems that control versus creativity that releases. Let's go after this in our families, in our own heart, in the places that we have. So we just bless that in Jesus' name. Love you, Chris, and everybody having a great time this week. And thank you, Chris, again for coming. And remember, you're born to create, and Creativity Unlocked. Get that book. Talk to you soon, Chris.
Thanks, Theresa.
Bye, everybody.